Hey, can you see these guys? Hey. I love these birds, man. Actually, they're geese. Canadian geese. They're great flyers, man. I love them. They come out here in the morning sometimes. I love these guys. Take a look at them. They were squawking a few minutes ago. When they're flying through the air together, man, they make a lot of noise. What flyers they are, you know? Anyway, what is the function for which this video is even going to be put up, I guess? I guess what I do is I provide what, if you want to call it commentary, perspective, things that my heart feels, because it is the heart through which I communicate. I listen to a little bit of David Icke. He calls it the wheel of light, and that's one way. That's another way to use words to describe what it is. I think of it as a big ass vortex, which means that light is spinning in that thing like crazy. So how much fire do you got in your soul that's burning that light? How hot is it? Right? So there were a few things that I watched a couple of videos, and there are some things when certain events or certain things that come before me, it's sort of crazy the way this works, but when you really sort of begin to understand what a timeline actually is, your timeline or my timeline, it's an event timeline. An event. A thought is an event because you experienced a thought. You experienced a feeling. So I thought, for example, why do you have tear ducts? Tear ducts have a function, don't they? This is not just some random accident on why we have tear ducts. Okay? Shed tears. Why? Pain. Releases the energy that we're experiencing. Okay? When we suffer a loss of energy, or we experience the loss of energy in a loved one. Okay? So there's a function for that. Okay? And that is to bounce back. Bring the energy back up. Because we know who we are. Our identity function. Why we're here is an identity function. Okay? So you realize when you're here, at least as I did at such a young age, that this was a spiritual war. Okay? So when you know that it is a spiritual war, you're dealing with evil on a level at which most people can't comprehend. And even if they could, and you show them what they do, would be horrific. It would traumatize them on a level at which they might not ever recover. Okay? So yesterday, I subscribed to a guy by the name of Miles Johnson, former BBC journalist. I love Miles Johnson because of what he does in a way which is love and service to others. Because I guess it's been for 25 some odd years. You know, I don't hold things to specific dates and times. That's programming again. You know, remember rote memory? They're going to give you an A if you can remember the exact date when this event occurred. Okay? Oh my God. You know, it's like fear again. Fear that you don't get the date right. Fear that you don't get this right. It's insanity. Okay? That's why I don't wear a watch. I'm not going to be held captive to a language or the way in which things are perceived as the way in which somebody else perceives the universe in the way that they do, so they want to program into you the way that they do. That's control. That's a control mechanism. You should be free to be able to experience whatever you want. And when you're running on infinite creative imagination, that's exactly what you're doing. And when that wheel of light that is within you is spinning at a very high rate of speed and you got an enormous amount of fire that's burning that light hot, you're running your own story. So I knew when I was a child, I don't let anybody control the script, the timeline. I'm in charge of my own timeline. Okay? So you realize when you're running that much light, you're going to experience what it is that you are. You're experiencing your own timeline. So when you know what love is, which is what we are, which is in living spirit, what that light and what that love represents, then it's obvious what our function is. So there's a lot of light in here, isn't there? Yes, of course there is. There has to be. You know, there is logic in the universe. Okay? What would happen if we lost all the light everywhere? So there were a couple things that I watched yesterday. Sometimes, and I'm sure everybody can sort of understand this, if you broke everything down to data bits and bytes of information, okay, and you watch a video for, say, an hour and a half, that's a lot of bits and bytes of data, isn't it? Now, there's a lot of bits and bytes that represent somebody who's giving you bits and bytes of information, but you might only need to experience the data, because that's what it is, you're experiencing the data, okay, in your light. And so then if I watch a video, it may only be maybe a few bits and bytes of information that are relevant to why I'm even watching that video. Because when that video popped up and prompted me, it was not a random event. It means that it was meant for me at the time in which I'm supposed to experience it. I wrote it into my timeline to experience it in order to know what she was saying at the time in which she was saying it, which represents the data that she was presenting. The rest of the video I didn't need to watch because I realized that was the only reason that I came there to get that data. Okay? So this lady's name is, I believe her name is Evelyn or Bixby, something like that. I could be wrong, okay? I don't like to hold myself to getting the names and everything exact because of the way that memory works. A couple of years ago, I was deleting huge libraries of information or data that I put into Memory Plus in order to be able to, if you will, what I did from the beginning when I was in here was to collect data. Collect and experience all the data while at the same time trying to have as much fun as I possibly can, which basically means restoring my light as a result of the way that the energy works here and all the technology that they were using in which to drain it. Because that's what they do. They're energy harvesters. That's what Star Wars is, which is electric wars. So you got to be more powerful than they are to survive it. Okay? Otherwise, you're consumed. Because that's what you are to them. Food. Energy. So, in this particular video, she was talking about a photon belt that apparently the Earth was passing into. Now, me, I don't worry about nothing, okay? Because my living spirit is always connected with a girl on the planet, so whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Okay? Whatever the next event is, whatever that event is what is supposed to happen on my timeline. Okay? So I don't worry about my timeline. Okay? Because love goes on forever. And when you know that because you are that, and you've known that since you came in here, then you know that the universe is going to take care of itself, which means you're going to take care of yourself because of the energy that you're running on. You are part of that fabric. You are part of that light, which is what that love is in spirit. So we're always needing to bounce back. So that's called the theory of relativity. What is relative to us? It depends on who you are, how you experience who you are, and how you translate the energy field in which you're experiencing what it is and who you are. And if there is a difference in the speed between one and the other, you're experiencing the speed of the difference between who you are and what it is. That's how you know when you're a child coming in here, the difference between what you are and what you're not. That's based on the evolution of who you are, your core vibration. Okay, so we can measure the core vibration of what is normal for a particular soul to be experiencing who it is that they are in relationship to everything else that is. So that's how we translate the entire cosmos as a communication network. Right? So she was communicating yesterday on the video from information that she said she got from, as I remembered, a Palladian and some other friends. She said there's some information that I just cannot reveal. Okay. So information represents energy. She doesn't want to share the energy, which represents the data. Okay, for what reason? because it's sensitive. Sensitive, like I have sensitive emotions. So one of the things that she talked about in particular was memory wipes. Okay? Because the things that have been done here on this planet, particularly below ground, is of such a horrific nature, okay, that, like I just said a few minutes ago, it would traumatize people. They wouldn't believe that something like that horrific is even possible. And believe it or not, in some ways, I say, you know what? Bless their heart that they could feel that way. You don't want them to experience that, do you? No, we don't. Thus the purpose, the function of a memory wipe. Now, memory wipes can be used both ways, okay? Because it's not like they don't have knowledge of how to do things, because they do. That's the first thing I noticed as a child. The knowledge that they acquire is not meant to benefit everybody in the cosmos. The knowledge that they acquire is used to conquer it. So that's why they're an inversion of who we are, which is what love is. They don't generate any of that. So instead, they have to harvest it through us, and that's exactly what they do. So when you realize, for example, in this case, a planet ship has been overrun, okay, by demons and vampires and sorcerers and all the rest, they're energy harvesters. They use energy against others who are a source of energy in order to control what it is that we experience, which is who they are, which is lower density consciousness. That's not who we are. Okay, so now we're translating the difference between who we are and who we're not. And what we are is based on the energy that we're experiencing, who we are. We know what our identity is. We know the energy niche, which is relative to who we are against everything else that is that we experience. So we're experiencers. We're experiencing the energy. So one of the things I was thinking about that I wanted to convey was like when I took a class in what is called research methods, where we're trying to statistically account using math to see if we can control the variables so that whatever result we get in a study is reliable. You know, plus or minus 2%, 5%, whatever the specification is that you want to assign to the variable. Now, why is this important? Because it's important when you think about timelines. Okay, so for example, with me, when I think to myself, when I go look at math and physics and the rest of that, that's reverse engineering. Now I'm going back in time, how it was all constructed, rather than being in the conscious creative mind and then creating through my imagination what it is I'm experiencing, which is immediate. So if I got to stop and explain how that works, I'm going in reverse. Now I got to slow it down, go back and see how it's all put together and then explain it. Okay, so I'm not in my conscious creative mind creating what it is I'm experiencing at that speed. So what happens is if we're all running basically at the same speed at a frequency in which we're all in alignment with each other and we're communicating with each other what it is that we know and what we're experiencing, that's another thing. So that relates to timelines because you have so many different beings that are here that run different frequency levels of who they are as a core vibration, which represents their particular timeline. So if you are running high frequency energy like 600, 700, 800 megahertz, you know, you're in a state of harmony with yourself. That's high energy. That's peace, love, and joy. So when you're experiencing that kind of energy and that represents your timeline, you're not, love is the absence of fear. You don't fear anything because you already know what it is that I know, which is love is eternal light. So we don't choose to experience things that causes us any loss of energy or any pain and suffering. And not just us, but anybody else. So now you get down to, well, how many beings do we have on this planet that live in a state of fear where they're going to use their energy on a timeline that we're on, because we're aware of who they are, they're aware of who we are. So if they can, if you will, activate more of the negative energy that represents, hey, we're going to experience this in a simulator, then there's more psychic energy being used in order to what? Manifest an experience that the rest of us experience because they got more negative energy than we do. So the light has to be more more powerful in order to maintain the kind of experiences that we experience on timelines. So now we get into all the collective timelines that represent all the timelines that everybody is on. You change one event, then you change the link. of the next event. So the next event is now time. So that's why, like for me, I realize, for example, that when I access data, it's because I'm supposed to access and experience that data at that very exact moment. Okay? Because it's relevant to the next event. It is on an event horizon timeline. Okay? So I only access that which is relevant to that moment. And then I go on to the next moment, to the next moment after that, the next moment after that. Then that information is gone. I don't need it anymore. So I use it to communicate. Because the energy and the experience and the data is relevant at that very exact moment. Not before that moment, not after that moment, at that moment. So what we're doing is accessing and activating, or if you will, experiencing the data at a very precise time. It's calibrated to all the other timelines. And that's what all the light warriors and light workers doing here, including her. That's how we fix this. When you realize the level of technology they have to wage a war against the goddess, because that's exactly what it is. They don't come in here to give her flowers, okay, and say, we love you. They came in here to harvest everything they could out of her. Okay? So when Patty Broussard, for example, said her shield was down by 25%, that's a measurement. It's a measurement of what happened here. So we got to restore it, and that's exactly what's happening. So this lady on Basis Project, which is Miles' YouTube channel, by the way, he has a huge library. There's 3 primary resources that if people want to get up to speed, I recommend. That's just my opinion. Okay, to get up to speed. Speed like the data that you're accessing, so you sort of snap all this data in place, which relates to the underlying causality of why things are happening at the accelerated speed in which they're happening. Okay? So I would say, obviously, numero uno is Project Incension, INSCENSION. Okay? Now, in the past, you couldn't even access that YouTube channel, even though those YouTube videos are there on Project Incension. I usually access it through YouTube, but I got all that stuff bookmarked and used to have it all downloaded. Used to capture all the different images and then spread all that information as far and wide as I possibly could over the time in which I could do it. The second one is Basis Project. Ton of information. And then, of course, Harold Kosvela, who probably did some of the best work I've ever seen on breaking down black goo, which is made by the Archons, the makers of the black goo. Okay, those are 3 big, important resources of information. But again, you're back to belief systems and what you believe is true. Now, for me, it's easy. I know what love is because that's what I am in the living spirit, okay? That allows the heart to discern whatever's happening, okay? So when somebody communicates to me what it is that they believe is happening, that's their belief, okay? That doesn't mean I have to believe it, okay? When you think in terms of what pure light is, which is pure love, because you're running a pure heart and a powerful vortex of what light is and what love is, then you sort of know what your future is already. Okay? That's your timeline, even though I don't consider time. I only consider what love is, because love is what's real. So I don't live in a lie. I don't live in fear of what love is. I am what love is. So when we're experiencing that energy, because that's the energy that represents what we are in living spirit, then we sort of know how we can gauge and translate why we're having the experiences that we are, because we're in an energy war between high-density consciousness and low-density consciousness, and we're returning to higher-density consciousness. Okay? So that, for me, that's self-evident. So I get information that gets communicated to me through my heart, and particularly in the morning. So this is what I do. I share it. And then it's gone. And then I'm experiencing more data or more information. And that's how it works. That's how you experience the cosmos. You're experiencing all the data, all the information that is vibrating in a waveform. And when you're living through your heart and spinning as much light as I get to experience, which is a gift. I think of it as a gift we give to ourselves. Spin that as fast as you can, mama. You know, so it's always beautiful to be with a goddess. That's my perception. Okay? So it's like we're only in here for a limited amount of time. It's just like, bang, and you're gone. because you realize, my God, when you're living in an infinite universe, because you're running on infinite light and living spirit, hell, man, how many stories you got to tell? They're infinite. That's your conscious creative mind. So anyway, this gets into pole shifts, and I need to make sure I get into this before I run out of memory. If you go to Project Ascension, I believe is one of the last videos that Patty did. She talked about pole reversal, and that is the poles were moving. I know that when they had the Battle of the South Pole, which was in August of 2017, if my memory serves correct, that's when the Ring of Midas was recovered. Patty's in possession of that. That's big because that's the Earth Builders tools. They took the shield down. That allowed the South Pole, because they flash froze fresh water. Fresh water doesn't conduct electrons. Now the South Pole's on the move. It was moving, as I remembered, at something like 47 miles per hour. The North Pole was sort of wobbling. So you begin to realize we're going to go through a pole shift. I realized when I was with Patty at the time, she showed me some schematics of how we were going to be together to build dome structures to survive what are going to be basically a crustal displacement. Then I got information that the Arcturians were here. They stabilized the poles. They're helping to rescue children, put them in biospheres, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you realize everything is relative to time and the rate at which change is going to take place, okay? Because you're moving from the old world to a new world, okay? So this is the important and why people are helping to navigate people to do the inner work, get your vibrational speed up, to shift gears, okay? Because let's face it, when you collect all the data and realize everything that's happened on this planet and the ozone, the radiation levels, et cetera, you realize either that's got to be restored and we maintain, this particular, how do I put it, simulator, okay, versus another one that you jump into that has got pure water, purity. It's all about purity, isn't it? You want to experience the purity of everything, rather than things that are contaminated as a result of beings that don't consider what it is in the future is going to happen as a result of what they do now. Okay? So that's the difference in consciousness. That's the difference in the speed at which they experience who they are and the rest of the cosmos. So I'll leave you with that. Love you all. Have a great day.